All right, welcome everybody. I'm glad you joined in to my very first podcast for Combat Learjet. My name's Steve, and I'm here with Derek from Mo Guns. He's the owner of Mo Guns Tactical, and the two of us are going to work through this today. This will be a learning experience for me, and we'll just talk about some of the things we look forward to in the future. Along with we've got some folks here too. If you guys have tickets or questions, I'd like to answer some of those. So anyway, we'll get started. I just first with Derek from Mo Guns. Him and I have been friends a long time. He does a lot of the stuff for me. You've probably seen from my patches to stickers, T-shirts, all that stuff. He's a designer and all that. So he came to me a while back and said, "Hey, I think we should do a podcast. You could answer some of the questions along with talk about some of your experiences, how you got into flying and that." So those are the things I want to answer. I get a lot of questions on Instagram, how I got into flying, what I've done, and as you guys know, I've kept myself anonymous on there. I don't show pictures of myself or any of that, but I do like to answer questions and help folks with what they're doing. So that's kind of the purpose. Big picture in the future, I hope to interview some other folks that are in aviation, and honestly, I want to talk about Pilot to Pilot contacted me probably a month back, and I encourage y'all to go to his Instagram site. He interviews a lot of pilots and interviewed me, and it really showed me, wow, this is a great forum to kind of get the information out and answer questions about that. So that's kind of the purpose. That's kind of what we like to. Also, as you've seen probably from Instagram, I enjoy kind of the funnier side. So I look forward to maybe some flat earth type conversations, contrails, chemtrails, and I'm sure I'll have pilot stuff on here. Yeah.
Okay. We might have gotten kicked off there. Not sure, just some weird Yes. All right. We're back. So let's just pick back up where you
so
were.
yeah, picking up if we got kicked off, if you're in there. So pilot training is a year long. It's challenging just because you go from really not having much flying experience. I had about 50 hours of flight time when I got to pilot training, to within a handful of rides, you're soloing and flying a 2-engine jet. So I enjoyed my time at pilot training. It was at the time I went through, everybody flew the T-37, and you fly that for about 5 months or so. And then if you graduate out of that program, you move on to the supersonic trainer of the T-38. And just a quick story with that one. I still remember this day, my first flight in the 38. They put you up front, the instructor's in the back, and he's going to demo the takeoff. And just the speed of that airplane was so incredible. I remember thinking, I'm never going to get this. This is beyond my ability to fly. But over time you pick it up, and it was a super fun airplane to fly. And ultimately you get to fly formation and acrobats and all sorts of fun stuff in the military through that. So that pilot training lasted a year. I graduated from pilot training. At the time I graduated from pilot training, about half the class were not receiving an airplane when they graduated. The Air Force was fat on pilots at the time. And so half the class had to go do a desk job for probably 2 or 3 years and then would get an airplane. So thankfully, I was able to get an airplane out of pilot training, and I chose number 4, and I was able to get a KC-135, which I was thrilled to death to have one. So I went from pilot training to Castle Air Force Base, which is out in California, and that is where I began my KC-135 training. That lasted about 4 months. Graduated from KC-135 training, and my first station was at Griffiths Air Force Base, which is in upstate New York. I was flying the KC-135R model, which is the bigger engines. At the time, when I first started flying it, they still had the A models, which were the smaller engines that are they actually inject water into the engines to produce thrust. It's a crazy thing, but you can look it up and see how that works. But anyway, I had the R model and was able to go up to Griffiths, New York. Enjoyed my time up there. That was really got up there at the time I got to Griffiths. The Cold War was still going on, and we were setting alert, and I got to see how that alert mission worked. With something went down in the world, then we would literally be ready to go. We'd be sitting in a building just outside and run out to the airplane, start engines, and be ready to taxi and take off in just a few minutes. And we practiced that every week as we would do that. So it was great to get a chance to do that. The other thing that happened when I got up to Griffiths is that alert mission went away about the time, not long after I got up there, and we started really deploying the KC-135 more around the world. Excuse me. I was young, and I was looking forward to doing that, and we started really taking the KC-135 all around the world to do a lot of the missions. This is back in a time when Bosnia and Somalia, and this is right after the first Gulf War. We were doing a lot of stuff with northern Iraq, southern Iraq. So I was deployed a lot in the KC-135. I really enjoyed the mission. I enjoyed getting a chance to see the world, and it was just fun, knowing that you were a part of some of the stuff that was going on.
Did you ever have any close calls when you were on alert at Griffiths?
There was a time that the Russians brought a sub in really close to the coast off New York, and they had us sitting in the cockpit with engines running. just because of the reaction time. If the sub was to launch something, we didn't have enough time to get airborne and, survive. So the whole intent was that the KC-135 and the B-52s, or what were up there with us, would get airborne in some kind of nuclear conflict, and they would survive to be able to go do their mission. So it's kind of a grim mission, but it is what it is, and that's what we did. So
thankfully, you never had to.
Yeah, thankfully,
exercise it.
Thankfully, we never did that, but we prepared for it and we trained for it. We did close interval takeoffs, everything that was going to be needed in that situation. But that was a unique thing. So that was really the only thing that I saw when I was up at Griffiths. I was up there a couple years, and then the Air Force decided that they were going to close. We've really been drawing down a lot of our bases since the 80s, and the Air Force decided that they were going to close Griffiths. So I had to go somewhere else. So I ended up going to Fairchild Air Force Base in Spokane, Washington. I was at Fairchild for 4 years. I left as a co-pilot at Griffiths, and when I got to Fairchild, I upgraded to aircraft commander and then instructor pilot. And again, 4 years at Fairchild. Again, really at this point, a lot of stuff going on in the world, and I was gone a lot, flying different missions, everything from down in South America to a lot of stuff overseas. But again, enjoyed the mission, enjoyed what we were doing, but I realized that I was away from home a lot, and I wanted to not be gone as much. So at the end of my 4-year tour there, I made a decision to go to the schoolhouse, which is in Altus, Oklahoma, and that's where you're training other KC-135 folks how to fly the KC-135. So it's good and bad. The good of the mission was you're home every night. The bad is you have long hours, and it was busy training a lot of the students going through there. So, but I learned a lot. You learn a lot when you go become a schoolhouse instructor, and I did that for a couple of years.
Have any close calls with students in the aircraft?
Yeah. There was a couple. It's just hard teaching somebody that doesn't know. I was the same way. When you first start flying, it's hard to learn how to land this big airplane, and over time you get used to that, and you mitigate those risks. But yeah, there's always a few times that it gets your blood pressure going when you go, wow, what just happened? So we had one close call. We were doing touch and goes in, I think it was in Amarillo, and the student was doing really good. I was in the jump seat. There was another instructor. I was checking out an instructor. He had just got to the schoolhouse, so the new instructors had to get checked out. And anyway, the student was doing really well, had done a couple touch and goes, and coming in on their last one, and picked up a sink rate. They initiated the go around, but it was right at the last second, and we hit pretty hard. And in the KC-135, the big engines, if you look at them, there's not a lot of room between the engine and the ground. In fact, if I remember, it was like 4 degrees of bank. If you had more than 4 degrees of bank when you touched down, you could drag an engine. And several guys had drug engines. So we touched down hard, went around, and as we're on the go around, an airplane sitting there waiting to take off said, I think that KC-135 just drug an engine. I'm like, oh. I was just sick going, I hope we didn't hit an engine. So we obviously canceled the training, and we headed back to Altus, and, all said and done, we didn't hit the engine, but we had to be very close. So as soon as we landed, I raced down the crew ladder out to the engine, and thankfully there was no scrapes. But it's one of those lessons in aviation that you just learn that, wow, not much it could have done. It just happened. So sometimes that's the way it is. So I finished, I that was about 11 years into my Air Force career, 10 years, I guess. And I decided that I wanted to get out of the Air Force. And at the time, I really wanted to go to the airlines. So I got out of the Air Force. I started looking for a job, and I discovered the C-21 unit in Colorado Springs. And I'd never flown the C-21 before, so I didn't have any expectations of really being hired. They were looking for pilots, but they were looking for experienced, current qualified evaluator, instructor C-21 pilots. So anyway, I went ahead and applied. I didn't have anything to lose, and I guess they figured they needed somebody that had some different experience, and I was able to be hired into that unit, and I was hired into a full-time position. So I've done that. I flew the C-21 for a long time. I flew the C-21 for 17 years. So, and as you know, you probably saw on my Instagram page, I recently retired from the military. So that's kind of my military career in a nutshell. That's how it all got started. And then, obviously there's a lot of little pieces in that. As I said at the beginning, one of the things that I have, Instagram has been neat in a lot of things. It's opened the door for several people to be able. In fact, I see somebody maybe in here right now that I'm able to talk to and kind of say, hey, this is how you get into the military. This is maybe how you get into pilot training. That part's neat because I had a few people kind of help me along the way how to get in there, and I wanted to be able to return that to folks. And really, that's part of what this is I look forward to helping people maybe that are interested in aviation find a way to get into what they want to do.
So I'm sure you get asked that question a lot. How do you become a pilot? How do you become a military pilot? What do you tell them?
Well, I would say, there's a lot of paths in the military. I don't know the civilian side of flying so much just because I didn't do that, but there's a few paths to become at least an Air Force pilot. And I'm not an expert on the Navy and the Marines and how you become in that, but I can at least speak to the Air Force or the Air National Guard. Obviously, you could go to the Air Force Academy. If you do well at the Air Force Academy, you could get selected for a pilot slot, and then you end up going to pilot training, which I talked about is about a year long. That's one of the ways. You can also go through ROTC, which is offered at several colleges, and it's probably more competitive to get a pilot slot through that. But if you excel and do well in that, you can get a pilot slot through ROTC, and they'll send you to pilot training. If that doesn't happen, and let's say you already have your college degree, you can go through OTS, and then that is a third way to go to OTS, get a pilot slot, and then go on to pilot training. And probably the fourth and last way is that you go talk to guard or reserve units, and you will ultimately apply for a position in that unit. And if they have open pilot slots, you could be picked up and sent to pilot training and then come back to that guard unit. So there's plenty of routes to do it, but I would also say that they're competitive, and it's the standard things you probably heard your whole life. You got to have good grades, doing well on the ACT or SAT. And I also recommend if you fly on your own, you're going out and maybe getting some flight hours, that shows you that you're interested in aviation. And a lot of times they look at all that. So yeah, that is the route to get in there. All right. I'm going to answer a couple of questions in here. I see there's a couple popping up here. If you guys got some, John is asking, I'm here from Instagram, currently a pilot in training and plan to go in the Air Force. And these are great tips. Okay, so yeah, I appreciate it, John. It sounds like you're doing all the right things. The key there is, continue your flying and, stay out of trouble, and you can make all that kind of stuff happen for you. So yeah, there's plenty of routes to our pathways to get there. So, is an aircraft assembly a good job? So I'm assuming you're asking about a maintenance. Yeah, I mean, obviously I have. If you see on Instagram, I do a lot of shout outs to the folks on there, the maintainers and the people that take care of the airplanes is a great job. And those jobs are definitely out there in the Air Force. If you're interested in some of that, the Air Force has a broad range of all those type of jobs. So there's a good question. Would it be easier to get into helos than jets? I don't know that specifically. I know the Air Force definitely has the helos, but and that has changed over the years how they did it. When I went through, you would go through a portion of pilot training, and then if you decided you wanted a helicopter, then you would kind of leave pilot training and go to helicopter training. I'm not sure how they're doing that now, but I would say that it's probably more difficult. Helos we have less of them, at least in the Air Force. Now, if you're looking at the Army, that's a whole nother different route, but you're also, it's just one of those routes that I don't know a ton about since I don't have experience. So I couldn't help you there, but I know the Air Force does have some helicopter pilots. So, let's see here, an engineering student going into aircraft design. So that's awesome. But would rather be flying. I have to say, I talk about this a lot. And I hadn't really said, I retired from the military, and I don't really want to say what I do now. I just say that I'm a professional pilot and I'm continuing my flying. So, the flying is awesome. I've been doing it for, I don't know how many years now, 28, 29 years, a lot. And I still love it. I still enjoy it. I still look forward to it. It's challenging. It's new. It's a great job. I can't say enough good things about it. It's a job that I've always loved. It's a job that it has tried me. I've had to work really hard at times. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it through stuff, but it's a very rewarding job. And I would encourage anybody that's got some interest. And where do you do that? How do you know if you want to do that? I would say go out and get some lessons. Start with a lesson or two, see if you like it. I would encourage you, if you do lessons, to get beyond one or two, because the first lesson or two, I remember my very first flight lesson, I was disoriented. I was mildly airsick. I didn't throw up, but I didn't feel great. And it's just distracting. And you're like, man, it's just not really that much fun. So I would encourage you to get through more than just a couple of those, so that, you could actually see what it's like. And, I would say in any airplane I've flown, when you first start flying, it's challenging, it's difficult, and it's not necessarily a lot of fun. But as you begin to master the skill and know what you're doing, it gets better and better. So I got to ask about air sickness. A lot of people struggle with air sickness. And even when I got to pilot training, we had a couple of folks that got sick several flights in a row. They give you a lot of opportunities to overcome that. And typically the body does. With some medicine, sometimes you can get better at that. However, some people never really get beyond it. And if at least in the Air Force, if you don't get beyond it at a certain point, you end up washing out because of that. But it is it's something that a lot of people struggle with. So I wouldn't worry too much about air sickness. Let's see. Is there a height limit for fighters? By Luke. There is. I don't know what that is. I can tell you, I just recently flew with a pilot who was an F-16 pilot, and he was 6'5". So he obviously was able to meet the requirements, but there are some limitations. I know in the Learjet, I'm a bigger guy, and there's bigger guys that I flew with. And unfortunately, the Learjet has a tiny cockpit, and it gets uncomfortable at times, but there's definitely some limitations.
Yeah.
And I would say that too. I want to encourage some folks out there in the sense that, at least on the military side, the military is very restrictive on physical things to get in. If you have any amount of color blindness, you're not going to get in the military, most likely. Sometimes there's just physical things that keep a lot of people out. But I'm, those are things that are out of your control. So I wouldn't necessarily beat yourself up over that, because sometimes, and I'm very grateful that I was able to get through that, having the eyesight, all that kind of stuff are just some things you just don't have control of. So it's difficult. What was my proudest and most fondest memory in the Air Force? Man, that's a good question. I had a lot of them. I kind of separate my Air Force career from my Air National Guard career. I'd say my Air National Guard career, I met some of the best people in the world. They will forever be some of my closest friends. Enjoyed flying with them. Pilot stuff is one of those guys. I give him a hard time on there, but we are truly good friends, and we've been through a lot together in the Learjet and just some other things. So pilot stuff is one of the great guys, and hopefully I'll have him on here in the future. He can talk about him.
Which is also why it's so funny occasionally in either yours or pilot stuff's comments when people think you two hate each other.
Yeah, I get a lot of DMs on Instagram going, "Why do you hate pilot stuff?" And I don't really hate him. That's my sense of humor. I like to have a good time on there. If you haven't noticed, I try to make it fun most of the time. But yes, so I have great. There's lots and lots of stories out there. Lots and lots of times where, you're doing some missions that are really cool. Some things, I got to refuel the B-2 when it was very early on. Hardly anybody had seen it. We went down to Edwards, and it was still at the very end of the test phase and coming online, and just getting a chance to see that in the air for the first time. It's cool stuff. So yeah, I went places I'd have never had a chance to go. I'm from New Mexico, and I would have never seen some of that other stuff. So, so a lot of great, maybe we can talk about some of those. I'll think about that in future episodes, talk about that. Do I know anything about getting in the Coast Guard? I don't really. What I can tell you, I think Coast Guard has some great locations where you can go fly.
Yes.
But, and they have C-130s. They have some, obviously a lot of helicopter stuff. The folks I've talked to in the Coast Guard have all seemed to really enjoy their job, and it looks like it's a great aviation job. But I honestly, since the Coast Guard is it's not officially, in the Department of Defense. I don't know, maybe they moved that around, but I don't know a ton of the route to get into the Coast Guard, to be honest. So those are things I can look up and we can talk about in the future. Yeah, I mean, this will be a platform that obviously Instagram, it's not really the platform that you're able to
convey a lot of information.
And I would say, I just want to talk a second about Instagram, because that's kind of what started this whole thing. I started my Instagram page a couple of years ago. I'm about, I guess, maybe a little over 2 years. Mm-hmm. My whole intent with Instagram was to share some of my experiences. So when I first started my page, all I ever shared was just my own pictures. I never reposted anybody's stuff. I only posted what I had taken or had seen, sunsets, sunrises, airplanes off my wing, all that kind of stuff. But over time, I just kind of got bored with, like, how many times can I show a F-15 off my wing? It's the same stuff over and over. So I started kind of looking out and realized there is this amazingly cool aviation world on Instagram. And so I started kind of reaching out and reposting some of that. And, it's stuff that I see. It's stuff that, when I see it and go, wow, that's cool. I hadn't seen that. Then I'm going to post that. So it's been a great platform to kind of share the whole aviation type thing. But what I wanted to say about that is, once the growth took over and I got bigger, I don't see a ton of the DMs. I just get too many of them.
Too many.
I mean, if I could show you my DMs right now, it only goes to 99, and then it has a plus sign, and it stays at 99 plus. I I've tried to clean it, get down more than once, but I guess what I'm saying to you guys is that don't think I'm too good to answer your stuff. I just can't get through it all. I have a life, and it's not all about going through DMs on there. So this is a forum.
This is an excellent platform
that I was hoping to kind of get some of that information out that maybe doesn't get answered in a DM, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to go through than the hundreds of DMs you get.
Yeah. Have I experienced a panic attack? No, I haven't. There's been times that, like I said, I've had some times where you're short on gas, the weather's bad, your options are dwindling, and it gets your heart rate up. But a panic attack's probably not a good thing as a pilot. I mean, that's one of the things that you want to be able to keep your calm as you go through this thing, because you have to be able to function and operate when things necessarily, aren't going the way they should. But so that's something I haven't officially experienced. So Any other last minute questions? I think we're about to wrap this one up.
We're about to wrap this one up. It's been an excellent introductory episode.
There's one more question here, Joe. What airframes did you have? And Joe, I appreciate it. Joe's one of the guys that we've talked on Instagram before. So what airframes did you have on your dream sheet aside from the 135? I was looking at the heavies, C5s, and at the time we didn't have the C-17, but I looked at several different airplanes, but it was the Lear, the C-21 was actually right at the very top of my wish list, but on my drop there was no Lears in there. So, but I mean, some guys want to fly fighters. I was not really that guy, so it's it's different for each one. So. I just want a couple more questions. Are you a chemtrail pilot, Mike Wagner?
Yes.
Mike, I'm going to have you on here one of these days, and we're going to talk about chemtrails. So I definitely want in the future to talk about how the whole chemtrail thing came about. So that's
a whole episode on its own.
Yeah, it is. So I would say there's one last one. I currently fly King Airs and C90s. It sounds like you're doing the right thing. If you're wanting to get into the military. The age thing is the one thing I didn't talk about. I think the current age to be in pilot training, and Joe, you might be able to help me on this. I think it's 31. If that's the case, for some people the clock is ticking. So if you decide you want to get in the military, you need to be able to get in there before you turn 31. So. Yeah, I see a boom operator comment on there. I just want to 29 and a half. There you go. Thanks, Joe. I just want to say I had some amazing boom operators over the years. The 135 is a unique crew. So you have a pilot. At the time I started at a pilot, co-pilot, navigator, which are all officers, and then you have an enlisted boom operator. But just an amazing crew. We had some great times back in the early days. We were hard crew together, and I've got some stories I could share on another one. But I love the boom operators. They were always great to me. My very first boom operator was a senior master sergeant, and I was a second lieutenant. And he taught me a whole bunch about the Air Force and how life works. And I still remember him, Steve Ingram. So,
Steve Ingram.
Yep, great guy. And I enjoyed flying with him a ton. So
awesome. Well, on that question, I think we're going to have to wrap up this first
That sounds great. Hey, I appreciate you guys joining in. Derek, how's this going to go? Do they upload it?
Yep. This was the live show where we answer questions. You guys can talk with us. It's going to go up on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, all the major podcast platforms. If you have any questions for those listening on any of those platforms, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can come in and hang out with us live. Thank you guys so much for listening. We had a blast. Be sure to check out moguns.com.
Yep.
That's where we have all the Combat Learjet merchandise. We have shirts, stickers, patches, and we have some more patches and shirts coming out in the future. Thank you guys for joining in. and we will talk to you next time.
Yeah, appreciate it. We'll try to do these once a week. So we'll be back with you on episode 2 soon. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. So for the live cast, we're still going to go. That was segment 1 of live show. We're going to record 2 segments at a time. And hold on, I'll get to those in a moment. 2 segments at a time just because it's easier for our schedule, and then upload once a week. So if you guys just hold on one moment, we'll be back in a second. We're going to record a whole nother episode. All right, everyone, we're back. Thank you for hanging in there. We're going to record episode 2 of the Combat Learjet podcast here for you live. All right. You want to do the introduction again?
Yeah, so this is Combat Learjet. My name's Steve. Episode 2. Appreciate you joining in and joining us. We talked about this on episode 1, but the plan is to do these roughly once a week, depending on our schedules. Try to get these out and just to be a forum to answer questions, forum to talk aviation type stuff, a forum to have fun and talk about some of the, the stupid things I post on Instagram about flat Earth. And I'm actually wanting to have a flat earther on here, so we'll see how that goes.
Hopefully, that would be amazing.
Hopefully, yeah, maybe flat Earth T-shirt would come on and explain. I'm still not sure that guy's not just doing that to sell T-shirts, but.
If he is, it's an amazing
he's a
strategy.
Master of that. So, and then Chemtrails, a lot of good fun on that, and we'll
I think we could definitely touch on some chemtrails this time. But
Yeah.
before we jump into that, last episode, we talked a lot about your military career. And one thing that we kind of glazed over that I think a lot of people would be interested to hear is your deployments. We didn't hear anything about that last time.
Okay. Yeah. I'll talk about
both in the Air Force and in the Air National Guard.
Okay. Yeah. So I'd say my very first deployment in the KC-135 as a co-pilot, we deployed to Turkey. That was an operation of back then it was called deny flight. Saddam Hussein was not allowed to fly in the northern and southern part of his country. This is after the initial Gulf War, but prior to the last, several wars over there. But so we were flying missions. We were refueling fighters at the time. One of the main fighter packages that we were doing were called Wild Weasels. And if you're familiar with what those guys were, it was an F-16 and an F-4. So this dates it a little bit, but they were, their whole job was to look for radar sites and go kill those, or SAM sites. So they had a neat mission to go out and look. So we would set up an orbit in northern Iraq and refuel the Wild Weasels when they'd come up to us. That was an exciting deployment. There was a couple of times along the way that AWACS would be controlling you, and you would get the call from AWACS telling us to retrograde, which mean basically as a 135, as a tanker, we have no weapon, we have nothing. So we would turn and run. But the 135 with the big engines could run pretty fast. So we actually had that happen to us once. They called I think it was a fish bed. Iraqi fighter was high and fast coming in at around 45,000 feet and Mach whatever, 1 point something right at us. So I could tell in the controller's voice, he was like, get out of there now. So we did. We turned, started a descent, and in a retrograde, the 135, if I remember right, could definitely go around 0.9 Mach, which is, for a big old airplane, is moving. So it's shaking and rumbling. But at the time, we were worried that, they were going to try to shoot us down. So we retrograded out of the area. The Iraqi, they just were playing games with us. He got right to the edge of his airspace and then turned around because he knew if he came out, our fighters were going to engage him, and his lifespan was not going to be too long. So that was my first deployment in the 135, and it was obviously very memorable. Incirlik, Turkey. It was a great place. We flew a lot of missions. I got a lot of experience and enjoyed that. I had several more over the years. One of my other missions in the 135 as a co-pilot, we had a special ops mission, and I was involved in that. And in essence, what we did, it sounds funny, but for the 135s, it's as special ops as we could get. But we would refuel the special ops 130 guys, the gunships and the HC-130s, and the guys that were doing things in different places. And those types of refueling were all done comm out, lights out,
under night vision.
Yeah, and we wore night vision. They wore night vision, obviously. So it was just done, obviously under the cover of darkness, all that stuff. So one story I got with that again will get your heart rate up is we also did these refuelings at low altitude for us, which are around 6,000 or 7,000 feet. Normally we refuel up in the 20-some thousand feet range. So it was planned. We were going to meet at a point at a certain time. We were supposed to be, I think, at like 5,000 feet. The 130 was supposed to be 1,000 feet below us. And the way we would do the rejoins, we would roll in behind the 130 and then overtake him because they're so slow. And then as we got over the top of them, we'd slow down, and then they would hopefully match our speed and come up and get their gas. Well, I remember I was looking through the night vision goggles, looking down. I couldn't see them. No, but of course we're not talking. There's no lights on. It's just total darkness. And as I was looking down, I was like, I don't see him. He must not be here. And I just happened to look up, and he went right over the top of us. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's above us. And that's when we realized at that split second that somebody was at the wrong altitude, and it ended up just being a mix-up in the planning. And they were at an altitude. They thought they were at the right altitude. We thought we were at the right altitude. Thankfully, we weren't at the same altitude, or that would have been terrible. But we missed each other. But it was one of those occasions where you realize, wow, that was potentially a close call.
How close were they?
Well, they were 1,000 feet above us, so that wasn't terrible. But they just were not at the right altitude. We thought they were going to be below us, or And anyway, it worked out. It's you have those in your Air Force career, and you just move on, and you're grateful that it all worked out okay. So. The other mission I deployed in the 135 is we deployed down to Panama to refuel AWACS. This is back when the war on drugs we were really getting engaged in that, and we would refuel AWACS, who in turn were looking for drug runner airplanes, and then we didn't ever do anything the military, but the other countries would engage them once we found. So that was a mission that I deployed to Panama over, and enjoyed that. And then just all the different areas of the world. Probably my best deployment that I ever went. We deployed to Istres, France. This is when I think it was Bosnia, or I don't know, Kosovo. One of those were going on. But Istres, France is down on the French Riviera, and it was a fantastic place to be deployed. So enjoyed that. We were there for about, 6-8 weeks. So that was my 135, lots of different ones. The C-21, our unit, our primary mission was stateside, so we didn't deploy a lot in that. However, you could volunteer to deploy, and I did. I deployed a couple times in the C-21, and we deployed to Qatar, or Qatar, however you want to say it. And we fly missions all in the Middle East. So we're taking the C-21 into some pretty unique places. And that really, as if you see the patch, that's the whole point of that patch, the combat Learjet, unaware, unafraid. I mean, we're flying combat into combat zones in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we have zero countermeasures. So,
or any way to know if you're getting shot at.
Yeah, there's no way. So and occasionally we'd be asked by our passengers, what kind of countermeasures we had, and we would just snicker and say, I guess we'll see the flash when it happens. But we didn't have it. So that was the whole running joke. So that's what's behind the Combat Learjet Unaware, Unafraid patch. It is, it's a running joke. It was a joke over there, and we kind of took it, and Derek from Mo Guns here really modified it and improved the quality of the ones that we actually had over there. Were pretty rough, but it's awesome now. So that was the primary place that we deploy, and then we went up to Alaska, if you want to call that. We went up to several places for some of our different missions, and we can talk more about what those missions were. I over the years didn't talk a lot about that, but so those were, I would say, a handful of the deployments that we did. So, I would. The other thing, I guess I'll just kind of piggyback on the 130 or on the C-21. What we did, primary mission. We do a lot of things in the C-21. It's a neat airplane. When we're deployed, one of our primary missions, outside of just moving folks around in the different war zones where it was. And when I say folks, we move different, sometimes it was some ranking leadership, but, other times you're carrying small teams of who knows what. I don't know what they're doing, and they don't necessarily tell you, but you move folks around. You also, we also were a small cargo that needed what you would call timely cargo, needing to get someplace quickly. We would do those missions. We carried the U-2's film a lot. So once the U-2 has a couple platforms now where they will can digitally download stuff, but now they also have platforms where it's still recorded on a big roll of film. It's huge.
That's a big camera.
Yeah, it's big. The film weighs a couple 100 pounds, but we would go in and pick that film up and move it to where it needed to go. So that's that are some of the missions of the Learjet. Probably the one that's and I've alluded to it and maybe talked about a little bit on Instagram, is it's our air defense mission that we do with that now. Obviously, after September 11th, the world changed. And one of the things we realized from that is that we were not really prepared for that type of scenario. We were prepared to go to war with different countries.
With a conventional enemy.
Yeah, but somebody stealing our own airplanes and hijacking them and flying them into buildings is not something I don't know that we'd ever envisioned. So we decided, not we, but the powers to be decided that we need to be prepared for that scenario. So we now test that. Our air defenses are tested, and I won't talk a lot about how that happens or what we do, but the Learjet is vital, plays a vital role in us, testing those type of defenses. So, and it makes sure that the fighters that are out there and ready for that are at the top of their game and ready to do it. So
helping make sure 9/11 never happens again.
Yeah, I mean that's our plan. Obviously, there's a lot of layers in that, but if it gets to that point, we're kind of the last line of defense, hopefully, to help prevent that. So.
And that was interesting when you mentioned the unaware and afraid. That I think has been really funny watching whenever some of the conspiracy theorists get on your page. I've seen multiple times that they'd comment thinking that the unaware, unafraid was relating to you don't know and you don't care about the chemicals that you're spraying out the back of your plane.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, and I think we'll dedicate maybe the next episode we'll dedicate solely to chemtrails.
So much good content.
I will tell you how I kind of got involved in it. I was early on in Instagram. I just posted a picture of I'd passed over an airplane that was pouring out some amazing contrails. I took a video of it. I posted it. It's like, hey, I got this great contrail video today. And out of the blue, I don't know if it was shared somewhere or what, but I started getting all these people telling me it was chemtrails. I didn't even know what a chemtrail was. I'm like, what are you talking about? So I had to go in and research what a chemtrail was, and then
dive into that black hole section of the internet.
And then I ran in. There was a guy. He's not out on it. He's on Instagram. He's just he's not as active as he was, but he was known to kind of poke the chemtrailers, and he actually hit me up and said, hey, these folks, this is what they believe, and here's some websites. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, this is a huge conspiracy theory. And
didn't he also introduce you to Joe the Wizard?
Yes, Joe the Wizard. There's a guy out there, Joe, that has and we can talk about Joe. He's got crystal wands, 144 sided Vogel crystal wands that dissipate chemtrails. So anyway, yeah, so that's all part of it. That we'll have some good times on that. We'll get Wagner on here too to talk about some of his, because he had a great post today with one of our shirts on there. So yeah, the chemtrail shirt, that's it. And again, Derek designed that. We purposely made the shirt so you couldn't really tell if you're pro or anti-chemtrail. So just so you know, that's the reason we get people going, well, you can't tell. I don't know. That's exactly it. So
at SHOT Show, you came with us to SHOT Show this year and you wore it around, and multiple times you had people working at the Venetian Center in Las Vegas who stopped you to tell you that they believed in chemtrails and were glad to see someone else there that did.
Yeah, they thought I was pro chemtrails. Of course, I didn't tell them who I was, and I just laughed at it. So yeah, but that's the whole point of it. And the shirts get a lot of mileage. A lot of people look at it. It does kind of look like Coke, but then you read it and go, chemtrails, you don't have a choice. So anyway, we'll have to talk a whole one. So all right, yeah, Mike said he's going to be in, so we'll look forward to that. So we'll talk in the near future, see if we can make that happen on there. So. Any more questions as we kind of wrap up this last one on getting in the military, those kind of things, how to, what you recommend? I did get an update on the age. Let me see here. I just saw this pop in. Joe sent me
which we mentioned last episode, the age cap for getting into pilot training.
Yeah. So it's 28 and a half years old for the board and 30 for being at pilot training, I think. So there, again, just that. I know that a lot of folks run into that scenario. Like, well, I finally got some hours. I'm ready to go. I'd like to be an Air Force pilot now. And maybe in the near future, the Air Force might change that. I would say on the positive side of that, the Air Force is hurting on pilots. They are short pilots right now. So if you have any desire at all to be a military pilot, not only could you be a pilot, but there's a good chance if you're able to obviously meet the qualifications and in the standards of being a fighter pilot, if that's what you want, because they're really short. I don't know. The last number I heard was like 600 or 700 fighter pilots short right now. So,
which is surprising because you'd think that's the job that most people out of pilot training would want.
Yeah, it's a job. It's a job that a lot of people do want. I mean, it's a great, if you want to go do that and be one of those fast movers, it's awesome. But it is also, there's a shortage because there's a lot of reasons there's a shortage, but a lot of the guys are getting out and going on and, doing other things. So the military, I don't know, I want to say this, I guess, the military was good to me, and I'm very grateful for everything. It was. I would say though, and for a lot of people, me included at times, it's hard on people. It's hard on families. It can be. I mean, if you're gone, if you think back of the last 10 to 15 years, we've really done nothing but been involved in one conflict after another. And so that wears guys down. And so those are some of the reasons, along with others.
Deployments.
Yeah, a lot of guys gone. And, sometimes pilots feel like we do everything in the Air Force except for be pilots, which, that gets frustrating for guys because you're constantly doing other stuff except for just flying. You just want to fly. So not just, but you want that to be your primary job. So workout. That's a good question. Early on when you get into the military. So Dirty Evil, what kind of workout do you do to meet the physical demands of being a pilot? That's a great question. I'd say, early on, you definitely need to be in great shape. And Joe, if you're still in here, you could pipe up that being in shape will help you get through the training initially to become a pilot. So you need to be able to excel and run in the 1.5 mile, push-ups, setups. I mean, we're the Air Force. We're not the SEAL team, so it's not that level. But I would say that you're definitely in shape, and that may help you get the pilot slot. As far as being a pilot, you have to meet. The Air Force has a standard that you have to meet every year, but it's not challenging really. And I would just say though it varies for what you're doing. And for example, as a fighter pilot, I mean, you got to maintain a level of physical fitness because pulling G's all the time, it's hard on your body. And if you're not, where you should be physically, you can run into situations. So that's a great question. It's kind of the whole package. If you're wanting to get in the Air Force, I would recommend, like I said before in the previous, good grades, good scores on the SAT, ACT, stay out of trouble. That's a big one. Stay out of, it's the whole thing you always hear, stay away from drugs. But I don't know how it is right now, but the Air Force a lot of times will ask, have you ever done drugs? So there's some of these things can follow you for a while, or arrest, being a stupid teenager and you got arrested for whatever, sometimes that could come back to haunt you. So I always say, try to avoid obviously that stuff, stay out of trouble, good scores, good grades, be physical fit, and all that stuff will work out. And hopefully you don't have some of those physical issues like I talked about, the color blindness or hearing. Here's a question I get a lot. What if I'm a ADHD and I've been on the medicine? That could be a disqualifier for you. I don't know the specifics on that. If you're still on it, I don't think you can be a pilot. I think there has to be a time frame from when you last took it to when you're applying. And that's not saying stop taking your medicine if you need to. I'm just saying that there's
get off your meds to be a pilot.
Yeah, hey, I'm stopping now because I want to be a pilot. So, but there's some limitations there. So those are all things that, again, if you hit me up on DM or email, I can ask flight docs and maybe get some of those answers. But those are some of the things that that have some limitations on being a military pilot. So yeah. Any other questions out there? Looks like we've answered, I think, most of them. Where did I go to school? There's one. I went to the University of New Mexico. I was a Lobo. So that's where I went to college. That's where I went to ROTC.
And previously, someone asked if your degree track in college will affect or help you become a pilot in any way.
You know, that has kind of ebbed and flowed over the years. There's been times where the Air Force really wanted engineers, and they really encouraged folks to be engineers. I don't know that that's necessarily the case right now. I was not an engineer, so I was able to get in. I had a worthless psychology degree. That's partly why I guess I am who I am on Instagram. But there are some different tracks that may or may not help you. So again, that's something that I think that it probably comes and goes. I know it does. Joe's saying that it does for OTS. And Joe, if you can let me talk about you for just a second. Joe and I have talked on Instagram for probably how long? The last year or so, maybe a little bit more. Joe DM'd me, said, hey, I've got some questions. We talked. I tried to find some answers. And Joe ultimately went to OTS, graduated OTS, got a pilot slot, and is now, I think, getting ready to start pilot training here real soon. So he's kind of the guy that's got all those fresh answers. I'm an old guy that doesn't necessarily have all that, but yeah, it's a year and a half, he said. So yeah, it's been a while. We've been talking for a while. So it is, he's an example of, you can go from being outside there to making your dreams come true if you want that. So, and I know I've sent a few people to Joe to say, hey, can you help them with this, that, and the other? So, but yeah, it's that's a neat thing. That's a great thing of Instagram that I think is I would have never had the opportunity to do that. And, there's a couple folks out there that are working through the system right now. So again, that's, as I said in the first one, I like to have fun, give people a hard time, but ultimately behind the scenes, if I can help you guys realize your dreams and do what you're doing, then that's what it's all about. So, and if you're on here, Joe's on here, if you have questions and you're not on the live, you can DM me and I can pass you Joe's IG information so you can ask him. So, so here's a question. Let me just, I'll pick this one. What do you think about the current North Korean situation? A bit hard answer, not politically, but okay, that's a great question. I will tell you, and you guys probably know, I've made fun of North Korea over the time, with their rocket. It's
hard not to make fun of Kim Jong-un.
with his airplane flying and his rocket launches, and I get people telling me all the time, hey, this is serious. It is serious, and I realize it's serious. That's part of who I am. It's just so easy to not make fun of that. However, I will tell you that from the time I've been in the military, we've been worried about North Korea. I remember early on us talking about North Korea. They've been
crazy for a long time.
Yeah, they've been crazy, and they've been doing things, they've been pushing for a long time. I want to hope that it's just all, it's just all a blowhard that's out there saying these things. And here's the situation. Can North Korea hit us? No, not right now. They could probably get something to Japan, we have people and obviously there. I think the biggest concern is South Korea. South Korea is obviously right there. They have lots of things pointed at South Korea. It could be devastating. So I hope that we're able to navigate these troubled waters. I always say the last person that wants to go to war is the people in the military. We're not warmongers. We understand what it takes and what the sacrifices are going to be. So I hope that we're able to figure this out. And that's not being political at all. I'm not going to be that on here. They are a threat. They do have nukes. That's a serious threat in itself. They just don't have a delivery system yet that works. So hopefully we can figure that out. So, Yeah, there's some people asking Joe for your Instagram. I don't know if you want to give that out here or not, but I don't want to throw you under the bus on some of this stuff. But if you want to DM me, if he doesn't get back to you, we'll get back to that. So
Awesome. I think that is a great place to
yeah.
wrap up episode 2. Thank you everyone for listening. If you're not listening to this live, be sure to subscribe to Steve's YouTube channel, Combat Learjet, where you can tune in and talk with us live, and we'll try and answer your question as best as possible. As we mentioned, it's a whole lot easier to talk to people here than it is through Instagram, when the comments on your posts and your DMs can reach the thousands pretty easily. Thank you everyone for listening. Be sure to check out moguns.com, MOEGUNS. That's where we have all the Combat Learjet stickers, t-shirts, apparel. We're adding more stuff of that soon. Thank you for listening. I'm looking forward to getting the show off the ground and doing more episodes and seeing who you're able to bring in and talk to.
Yeah, it looks good. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for putting this together, Derek. And I also want to do one last shout out, Pilot to Pilot. He did the first one out there, and he's going to release one that I did. I did probably 3 or 4 weeks back, so I'll post something on that. But again, I like the forum of being able to talk more than just on Instagram. So appreciate it, and we'll be back. We'll be back next week. So
yes, we will.
We'll see you then. So
see you then.
All right, guys, for the live guys, hey, really appreciate you guys engaging, coming in here.
Thank you for spending your evening with us.
Yeah, the questions are awesome. That's what I really want. So I'm hoping that I just tried to see them. Todd and Joe, I appreciate you guys kind of being in there and throwing some stuff out there. That helps. But we'll new shirts. Yeah, we're still
probably the Chemtrails Zero is probably going to be next.
Yeah, Chemtrails Zero shirts, and we're going to have some larger sizes. So
yes.
Yeah, so all that stuff will be coming. I promise you, Todd. So and thanks for all the stuff. I know a lot of you guys send me cool stuff. I don't ever find that stuff on my own. People are like, oh, you have an awesome page. I'm like, yeah, because people send me cool stuff. It's not because I typically find it. I just
don't tell them the
secret. I know those are the secrets. So I have to give credit to the guys like Todd and stuff that send me great stuff. But I would say I appreciate you getting on here, and we'll try to answer more of those questions. We're gonna have a good time with this. I definitely want to have some cool people on. I've already reached out to some of the snowbirds, and they said they'd be interested. I'd love to hear how their life is and how they do all the stuff they do. So, one last thing on here is my unit getting bracked. We haven't heard anything. I should have talked a little bit about that, but
cover it next time.
I'll talk about next time. But right now, it doesn't look good. We are not funded through FY18, and that right there is not a good thing. So unless politicians roll in and help out, then they're probably going to close down the Combat Learjet Squadron. I hope that's not the case. I'm hoping for a last minute 4th and goal, and we have a stop and we stop it. But honestly, it doesn't look good right now. So appreciate you guys. I know a lot of you guys did shout outs, and we will once we get I'll probably push that one more time, and then I'll make sure that we get our number 1 patch out to somebody that's, randomly that's helped us out. And we appreciate that. So, again, I had a guy just say, I hope your unit closes, whatever. I'm retired. So it's not my unit. I'm doing this for the guys that are still there that they're great folks there. And I don't want to see that. I don't want to see the mission. I don't want to see any of that go away. So anyway, that it is what it is. So thank you guys for joining us. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.